Okay, good morning and welcome back, everybody. Before we start our next session, I've been told that somebody in the audience has a golden envelope under your chair. So you have a little surprise. How nice is that? I want to be sitting on one of these chairs now. Has anyone found it? No? Oh. Well, no, it's a gift. So someone somewhere, there is somewhere around here, a golden envelope under a chair which contains a gift for them. Is that right? Yes, a gift. So whenever you get it, I'm actually really curious. I don't know what's in the envelope, but I'd be interested to find out if you're willing to share it.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
It's someone in that region. Oh, there we go. Yay! Well, congratulations on being the winner of the lucky golden envelope. Right, so I'm really excited to be chairing our next panel discussion on Rethinking EdTech, discussing the future of digital technology in education. I have a sort of wonderful group of panelists here that I'd like to introduce to you all. And I'm going to come over and join them. So first I'd like to introduce Dr. Neelam Parmar, Chief Digital Officer for EACT Multi-Academy Trust, Gemma Gwilliam, for Head of Digital Learning, Education and Innovation and Strategic Lead for Digital Portsmouth Education Partnership. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Kim Blanchard, Director of Digital Education and Artificial Intelligence, Interim Activate Learning, winner of the 2023 Association for Colleges Beacon Award for Effective Use of Digital Technology.
Yeah.
I got all of that. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Excellent. And Dr. Julie Vos, Head of Digital Education, Learning Enhancement and Development, City University of London. You know what? It's the introductions that make me the most nervous, so I'm just like pat on the back for getting that right. Okay. Now, this is such a hot topic, and I think I'm really excited. Part of my day job, I have the wonderful pleasure of working with the video games industry and trying to bridge the gap between what they're doing and what schools are doing in classrooms. And so I get to see firsthand just how rapidly technology is shifting and changing, and the potential seismic impact that has for students and where we're going with the future. And there is so much to unpack. I'm not going to waste any more time rambling myself, but I would like to dive straight into questions, if that's okay with all of you. So my first question, and maybe Neelam, if we could start with you, that would be great. What are the EdTech digital priorities and goals for your organization, and why?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? So as the Chief Digital Officer at EACT Academies at Trust, we're 29 academies in total. So a lot of what I do is having an oversight of the academy, the trust on itself. And so my priorities for the trust really are threefold. One, to save money, so look at economies of scale. And something that what I've done is developed an EdTech dashboard, so we can look at how we can offer transparency, what kind of EdTech tools are available in all academies, and then how we can share best practices. The other thing that's really important for us, I'll go louder. The other thing that's really important for us is developing a really relevant and up-to-date digital curriculum. I find that what we're teaching in our schools is slightly out of date and probably a little bit stagnant. So one of my main jobs was to reinvent the curriculum and now really run with it. So part of the plan is to now produce digital flagship schools in this area. And then following that, a third one is to create a digital flagship school within the Microsoft space. We're in Office 365 tenancies, we're all using the same collaborative platform, and yet every day there's something new that we just don't know about. So yesterday I learned a few more new features that our schools need to know about. So part of that plan, again, is to create digital flagship schools so we can have a copy and paste approach moving forward for the rest of the 29 academies.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Jim, would you like to take this next?
So I'm part of City University of London. It's a university with around 20,000 students, and our focus is on business practice and the professions. So some of our key priorities are supporting students to develop those digital skills for when they work in industry. We've got a very big focus on...
Sorry, I think we need to speak
really
up
echoing,
because the show floor is very, very loud. So
okay.
I think in addition to have the microphones, if we all try and project a little... Imagine you're back in the classroom. You're delivering an assembly. We want the kids at the back of the hall to hear you because the tech in school isn't working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. One of our big focuses is around digital transformation. We had a new strategy, a new president a couple of years ago, so it's been working through that. We've had a very long-running piece around digital education, but the focus has been around digital accessibility, so making sure that we have inclusive materials for all our staff and students, and a focus on digital literacies, student and staff capabilities. So I think those are our main areas, but we've got a big merger coming up with another university, and the challenge for us is going to be how we consolidate a lot of our learning systems. We both have very different virtual learning environments. We both have different lecture capture solutions. So looking at how we can move forward and find the best solution for both partners as we join.
Brilliant. Thank you. Kim.
Thank you. Am I speaking loud enough? Not
No.
quite. Okay, I will certainly try. At Activate Learning, I'm responsible for the digital education services team. We're two halves. We have a huge development team which supports the development of digital assets, the learner experience through our LMS, and we're verging in developing VR assets to support our curriculum, to provide experiences where students might not otherwise be able to do that, as well as develop AI tools to support their learning, such as an AI maths tutor that's embedded within our LMS. The other side of that is providing access to digital technologies and emerging technologies. So our libraries, we market as a digital destination. They are learning environments that support all of our learners. And so we offer VR experiences, a safe play zone for AI, and part of our initiative at Activate Learning, as well as to provide our students with those exceptional experiences with accessing technologies where they might not otherwise be able to do, is to support our staff. So we have a strategic objective to develop the knowledge, skills and mindsets of our staff in the digital landscape, and that then will empower our learners to be more digitally aware, to develop their curiosity, their resilience, and be able to be to focus on the digital skills for their future and be more effective in that. Thank you.
I mean, for those that know me, I'm really quiet, so hopefully you won't have any problems there. So for us, I know I breached on this slightly at the last Schools Academies Show, but Portsmouth is, well, it's the only city doing what we're doing. So we've got 62 schools, 14 different multi-academy trusts, but we're working together for a shared vision. Now, this year's been all about the fundamentals and the foundations. So think about those building blocks, the connect the classroom piece, the infrastructure, meeting those digital standards. So we've got a digital champion in each school ready to lead this. The next year for us, as we're coming towards the priority education investment area ending, is about sustain. So how can we actually achieve those goals we've put in place? How can we make use of the training and the support and the kind of ecosystem we've built within our city? But then also thinking about the future. So what is life after PIA, as we call it? How can we continue to enhance teaching and learning, reduce workload, support accessibility and inclusion, and narrow the digital divide for all members of our community? So there's a big piece of work we're doing around our adult ed, about making sure that no one's left behind, and then also thinking about what can we do outside of the city. So I know there's a couple of people in this room that I'm already starting to work with, that my leaders are beginning to work with. So we've got that shared vision, because actually our children do all live and grow up together, and it doesn't matter where you come from, actually you all deserve the same education, that opportunity to have the technology.
Thank you. I mean, it's great to hear all of you really sort of embracing development and growth and nurturing that sort of making technology inclusive for everybody. But technology sometimes, I know, can feel like it's developing too fast to keep up? And I think sometimes historically, maybe the education sector has a reputation for not being able to keep up. I mean, can the education sector keep up with the pace of change in technology at the moment? Or is it too fast? I mean, do we need to keep up at all? And would you like to take that first?
I think, do you know what, it's always the buzzwords as well, and I know at the moment the hot topic is AI, would you believe it?
Yeah.
But some people are still trying to run with AI when they haven't got the foundations in place. So you haven't got the infrastructure, you haven't got your IT team, you haven't got the security, the devices, the training, the support. So how can you be running off with AI when you haven't got all of this? But it's not new. I mean, it's like when smart boards and Promethean, obviously there are other boards available. When they all came out, it's like, oh, let's put one in every single classroom. Do you know how to use it? No. iPads, okay? iPads now, security settings won't update. So I think actually we need to be aware of what those foundations are to then implement everything in securely and safely.
Absolutely. There is something to be said about systems infrastructure first, the hidden side of the tech that nobody really sees. Yeah.
I agree. I think we're all on a similar journey, to be fair. And everything that we've all said sort of echoes a shared experience, regardless of the sector that we're within. I think we have to critically appraise the technology. We need to be mindful that when we're developing curriculums, they might not be assessed on that as part of their qualification. So it's that value add, and how much cognitive load do we want to, or overload do we want to give our learners? But it's for us. I think we need to campaign for more funding into our technologies, so that we can balance the playing field. We respond to our communities where we know there's a digital divide, where we know that the cost of living is having an impact, and some students don't have access to internet. So to be able to provide and educate is really important, but they might not necessarily get to experience. So that's our job, to empower our learners in a more appropriate way to secure their futures safely and ethically.
Thank you.
I think, like Gemma said, it's definitely about having that core provision of tools that can support quality, inclusive education. But whether we need to keep up, I think we need to keep an eye on what's happening. You know, for us, students are going out into industry. It's really important to know what those employers want, because otherwise we're delivering graduates who don't have the skills and experience that employers need. So, you know, a lot of institutions were like, oh, right, we're going to ban AI. Actually, I think that really showed people's appetite for change. At City, we were very much like, we can't ban it, it's there, people are using it, they are going to need these skills. Absolutely. We need to embrace it, but we also need to make sure that our processes are able to adapt. We need to be able to have some innovation and be agile, but not to the detriment of our core services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, if I could just end on that, I suppose. I think we need to keep up. That's the final statement, I would say. I think we need to keep up because our children are growing in a very fast-moving digital landscape, and they're pretty much being unsupervised. And it's us as educators who need to at least become as closely aligned as we can to the generation we're teaching. So while I agree we need to have foundations in place, while I agree that the systems and the processes need to be very firmly established, I'm worried that we may take an inertia sort of attitude, and until we completely, close our gaps, we don't want to move forward. But I think we have no choice. We have to, as educators, keep moving alongside with them, whether we like it or not. It's a bit like a life skill. We encourage our students to learn to swim because we know that's a life skill. Then why are we not thinking like this digitally? It's a life skill.
Yep.
And like it or not, they're in it and we're trying to swim with them. So my statement around this is we're barely keeping up, but we're here to help you. So we're together collectively, we're keeping on top of it, but we can't stop.
Can I add something?
Agree.
Yeah, of course.
I was just going to say, it's a case of as well, I mean, you're all here doing the right thing. It's a bit like parents' evening. The parents that you want to see don't turn up. But if we continue to keep sharing that best practice and learning from each other, while some schools may be putting their foundations in, you can still be spinning those plates that Neelam was mentioning, and we can move forward, but we need to be aware of those, like the skills gap that our children are going to have, if not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the technology they're using in secondary school at the moment will already be grossly out of date by the time they enter employment. That's, you know, so how do you prepare students for that world? And that's something we do seriously need to think about as education. But it's easier to say than, it's easier said than done sometimes.
Oh.
And I know, so I think I'd like to sort of combine the next two questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'd like you to think about, you know, we're talking about the need to do this and do that, but there are so many insurmountable challenges that people can voice as to say, well, I'd love to, but, you know, I think, and we could go on and on about challenges, but I'd like, you know, could each of you sort of think about maybe one key challenge or one of the biggest kind of challenges that you think the education sector are facing at the moment with regards to this topic, and then maybe how might we address that? What might we do about it? I mean, I wonder if we need to rethink our use of technology, but that's a side issue. But yeah, one of the challenges, in your opinion, we're facing, and what we might do to address that. Neelam, would you like to kick us off?
One.
I know, it's hard.
One of the challenges. Well, we know teacher recruitment is a major challenge. And I think if you really scrutinize that, it's less about teacher recruitment, it's lots more about teacher development. So I think working again as an EACT trust, we have so much specialism across our schools, 29 growing to 40 and above. So in my eyes, I would love to develop an online learning platform, a community of learning where we can help our teachers develop in the pathways that they want to grow. And I know that there's a lot of good work that's already taking place out there, but sometimes that work is not transferable into our localized context. So if we could share best practices, but in an asynchronous environment, in an online space where we're giving accreditation and we're very aware of the changes and development that's taking place, and we integrate it into the appraisal systems within HR, within the growing and the professional development, then I think, why wouldn't teachers want to stay with us? We take care of them. They know we're trying to invest in their future as much as they want to invest in the education of our students. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. But from that perspective, where does technology come into all of this? It's using the technology to fix an educational problem. So less so about digital literacy, less so about digital strategy, less so about EdTech and showcase, but using the technology we have simply as SharePoint to develop learning platforms that we could really invest into our teachers.
Yeah, it's a very interesting angle. Julie?
I think for me it all comes down to staff and student digital skills. I think at university staff assume students have got all these skills around using technology, they see them on their phones, but actually when it comes down to it, the students don't know. And we see very varying amounts of skills between students, some of whom who have never used a laptop. They don't understand that they need to use a mouse and a keyboard at university because they're so used to swiping through secondary and primary schools. So I think there is still this disparity, and I wonder if there's something we can do across the sectors to try and join up a bit more, to see this as a challenge for all of us, rather than each one working separately. But I think it does come back to that staff perception. Students aren't digital natives, which is a term we absolutely hate, but there are some staff who still believe this, and they go, well, they know, they were born with the technology. But they're not, and they do need to be taught, and we need to embed that into the curriculum. So you can't just assume students know how to use Excel. They might have heard it, they might have seen it, maybe did a bit of coursework on it, secondary school, but actually they don't know the skills. So we do need to be reinforcing this and giving them stuff in the curriculum to do.
I think we have, you're right, I mean, we have gone completely the other way, haven't we, I think sometimes. You know, I remember year 7 lessons, lesson 1, you're teaching students how to do, you know, use file and folder structures. And now we, now we sort of hear reports. I mean, I'm not in the classroom anymore, but you know, teachers talk about year 7s coming in and you know, wondering why when they touch the monitor it doesn't respond. It's a little bit mad. But Kim,
I would say I would agree. It is about the education, and I think it's about having that response. We work with local government funding streams to implement solutions and respond to the local needs within our community. So the digital divide, so to speak. It's being able to future-proof those solutions, because we can provide for the period of the funding, and then what happens when the funding runs out and that computer needs to be replaced, and the newer technologies that are emerging into education, such as VR headsets. You're forced to go down the route of a one-to-one device, but then managing that with a central safeguarding comes at a premium. So I feel there's two. It's much about the education, not treating digital as an added extra, so everybody thinks it's something more to do. It should be woven into everything that we do, because that's the life that we live, and that's the employment world that we're preparing our students for. But it's also about understanding that core funding provision and being able to be responsive and develop agile, ambitious curriculums that our students are empowered with.
Yeah.
And then with all of that, it's kind of about getting each school, and for you as individuals, to think about what's your why. So why are you doing this? Why are you investing this money in this tech? Why do we need to make changes to the curriculum? Well, actually, at the moment, we've got teachers in primary trying to teach a computing curriculum and digital skills, as well as everything else we're being asked to do. We've got a trainee teacher programme that still doesn't have, until September, technology as part of it. Now, actually, if you look at some of your trainee teachers coming, if you are in Portsmouth, we've written a programme for them so that they walk into a classroom with those skills for the workload. It's about really beginning to understand, actually, because those buzzwords, well, how do we contain them? How do we make them appropriate for our setting? And I think that's some of the challenges that people, if you don't know where to start, speak to people that do. Listen to lots of different voices and think about what your why is.
And I think something several of you have touched upon, we sort of going back to digital skills and competencies. And digital literacy can mean, people can define it in different ways, but essentially it comes down to your competency and you being able to use a digital device, computer technology, what other.
But it's not separating the ICT from the digital,
No.
because they're one of the same.
Yes.
That's,
Well,
Yes.
And the thing is, those types of distinctions, again, there's differing opinions on that. But
Yeah.
I think, in terms of one of those obstacles, thinking about educators, because I think one of the blockers, of course, is your teachers' confidence and competence in being able to use technology in the classroom. And you as a head teacher may be really well invested, but what happens if you've got a group of teachers that are not as invested as you? But the question is, are today's educators equipped to adequately develop digital literacy skills amongst students? It's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it? Oh.
Not yet.
Yep.
So you will have pockets of people, like the people in this room,
Yep.
there probably are, and pockets that aren't. Again, going back to their why, get people to start thinking about it's the right tool for the right activity for them in that moment in time. So you might have Neelam down the road using this tool, down the corridor using this tool. But that's going to work for Neelam in her setting and with what she's delivering. Is that going to work for you? It might, and then you've taken something, you've borrowed it, you've implemented it, you've got the outcome. But actually, it doesn't, and it's about not being afraid to say, do you know what, that didn't work for me, because it's about how you're going to implement and use whatever you've got to improve the outcomes of our children.
Yeah. I feel the same. It's about developing a culture of resilience, curiosity, checking the tools that you need for your role, and then for us in FE, where we are delivering vocational qualifications, is what tools do our students need to empower them into the workplace, and being responsive in that way, and keeping our eye on it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie?
Yeah, I think as been mentioned, even at higher education, we have people who are very enthusiastic about the technology. They want to do as much as they can, and others who are like, I'll put some stuff on the VLE if I have to, and that's sort of the bare minimum. So it is very mixed experiences. I think it comes down to confidence, like you said. Staff don't have enough time to practice, They feel very afraid when they stand up in front of a class of students in case the technology is going to go wrong. So some of it is having that underlying support for staff. In higher education, we do have digital education teams who can work with staff, talk about how they can embed digital skills. As I mentioned, we're rolling out things like graduate attributes, making sure that staff articulate where students can learn these skills, but then staff need those resources behind them to be able to say, okay, here's a video on Excel that I can point my students to. I don't have to run that session myself. So we have LinkedIn Learning available for all our staff and students to use, and I think that's a step forward, but it's encouraging staff to take that time to look at what's available and to embed that in their curriculum.
So, firstly, I think we should give credit to all the teachers out there because we're already so digitally literate. And I think sometimes we forget about that we have learned a lot along the way since the pandemic and to now and to all the information you have. I think it's impossible to keep up to date with all the technology out there. In fact, there's over hundreds and thousands of applications and tools. So to expect everyone to know it, I think would be impossible. I'm one of them. I don't know everything, but if you say figure it out, we'll figure it out. But I think what's really important is to look within your localized context. So if in school A, you have X number of tools, 9, 10, 15, that all teachers within that particular school need to know about, then know it. And then that's your space you work within. If there's something else out there that you don't know, who cares? You know, you'll figure it out when you need to use it. Just because school B uses 30X tools doesn't mean that school A has to follow all the same product case. So that's something that we're doing. We have a digital literacy curriculum. It's definitely revamped, but we're localizing it according to each context within each academy. If school A uses 9 products, another one uses 16, just know what you need to know and know it really well because that's what works really well within your ecosystem. But I think what's really important here is park digital literacy, let's move to AI literacy. That's actually up and coming. And again, I think we need to know about this. We can't really escape from this, but that's not about ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini. It's just not. It's the literacies. So just like how we started with ICT skills, communication, collaboration, computing, programming, what is ICT? What is AI literacy? And that's something I'm working on. We'll have it ready by the end of the summer, but it becomes a subsection of digital literacy. Like you said, ICT, digital literacy is one and the same thing. So AI is also one of the same thing, is it not?
Yeah. It certainly, I think there's certainly an argument to be had to say that it's all intermingled and interwoven. But so, Kim, I know you do a lot of work in AI.
We do. To underpin that, though, we have developed a digital competencies and an initial assessment. So we've identified 6 categories of digital capability, and within that we have levels. They're sort of built on a framework, and both our staff and students go through that, which identifies for my team where we can develop and support our staff. Each gets a spiky profile, and our learners get a spiky profile, but that contributes to a class cohort profile. And then our teachers can be responsive with the curriculum addition. But we have layered in AI as part of that. We're developing tools where we have learners that are doing the out of hours learning, the non-traditional 9 to 5, our adult learners. And so where there isn't a member of staff necessarily assigned to support, during that time we've developed AI tools such as an AI maths tutor. It's plugged into our learning management system. A question that they can't answer, they click on the AI bot and they're able to, the AI bot lifts the question and coaches the student to the response, to the answer, rather than giving them the answer. If they take too long, then that tool will ping the tutor to say this student is struggling on this thing. And we've developed the same for English and for our GCSE programs, and we're about to roll them out across all of our GCSE programs as well, for the face-to-face as well as the online. So it's about responding to the requirements of our learners and identifying those problems and where can we use that. But it's really about empowering with education. Don't switch AI off. encourage the use, but teach the ethics, teach how to be academic and have academic integrity, to deepen the learning of, because Wikipedia was the thing of the day. Everybody said no, you can't use that. But if it removes the blank page, then it can't be a bad thing.
Absolutely.
And it gets that person going.
It gives you a starting point, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? And it can be a scaffold. I mean, I think using AI to provide additional tuition for maths and English is such a powerful way of harnessing the power of that technology for the betterment of your students. I think it's an excellent example. But with AI, I think it's as much about, it's not going away. And I think that's the message, isn't it, with technology. None of this is disappearing tomorrow. It's going to be, there's going to be even greater volumes of it in tomorrow. And so I think it's about teaching students how to ask the right questions.
Yes,
and then knowing what to do with the answers when they receive them. That's where we step in. And I think some of it comes back to that segment of whatever tool we're using today, potentially, I think you said it, Neelam, it doesn't really matter what you're using. It really doesn't, because in 10 years' time when they're working, it'll be out of date. You think about the tech that was available 10 years ago. You pick up a 10-year-old mobile phone and you show it to a student, they'll think that, like, granddad, like, well, let me buy you an upgrade. So it's going to happen. It's there. So how do we prepare students? We're not praying for students for tomorrow, as in literally tomorrow, but a decade down the line. And for that, you need those longer-term cognitive competencies to enable them to be able to feel comfortable, but also to be able to harness whatever really sort of comes down their way, because we don't really control that. And I think I've stepped into the next question without realizing it. I need to sort of get off my thing, but so this is sort of really sort of about that next question, and then sort of wanted to sort of throw this to yourselves. And again, I think when I think about industry, the world I live in at the moment is sort of 50% industry and 50% education. And when I hear the people in industry, they say, oh, well, graduates are coming out, they don't have the skills we need. They don't have the skills we need. And they're talking about professional software levels, but they're also talking about those cognitive competencies. They don't have the resilience, they can't work in a team, they can't collaborate, they can't face criticism. They don't have the skill sets that we require. So they have their demands on the education sector, both in terms of 21st century learning skills, but in terms of those hard technical skills as well. And in your opinion, I mean, are they being fair when they say they're not prepared? I mean, we've got all sectors here in front of us. So, I mean, are we able to adequately prepare our students? And, if we're not, then how do we resolve that issue? Who'd like to take this question first?
If I may,
yes, please.
Because we deliver vocational qualifications, I think it's about the partnership with the employer, having that that clear line of communication about demand. It's also not forgetting the fundamental skills. There are statistics out there that do state that adults today are not able or equipped enough to be able to do the basics. We can focus on AI. AI is great. It has its place, but we need to make sure that we don't forget the foundation blocks. It's very much a hearts and minds piece, and it's very much going back to basics. But it's teaching Word. It's teaching Excel. Excel is the new scientific calculator. It's embedding those skills, because all 80% of organisations will operate a Microsoft platform. Are our students equipped enough to use the advanced skills, the tools to do that at an advanced level? So it's about thinking about that level, having the lines of communication, and we are very much about a partnership with our employers.
I think it goes back to what we said about technology for all. So you need the curriculum in place to support. A bit like literacy is everyone's responsibility. Well, actually, digital skills, it's everyone's responsibility. Something we haven't touched on today, accessibility and inclusion. Actually empowering our children and our adults and our children's families about how technology can be a tool for accessibility and inclusion. Even if they don't need it when they go into a workplace, they'll be able to support someone else that can. I know that I would have thrived a lot better in school and probably concentrated more if I'd had the tech. But now that I'm an adult in the workplace, that's self-taught. And actually we're going to have adults in the wider community, our parents and carers, who don't have those tools. If they haven't got those tools, they can't support their children, the children won't have them going into the workplace, it becomes that circle. So I think really building upon actually going back to what's their why, going back to curriculum, going back to making sure that we've got the training in place for current staff but also future staff, and having that shared responsibility for what you want to achieve.
And that's it, it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I was at a session yesterday and somebody mentioned the IBM skills durability model, and actually I hadn't come across it before, but it was quite interesting thinking about what are those perishable skills that they won't be in existence in 2.5 years' time. What are we teaching students that actually have no value 2 years into their role? Then you've got those sort of semi-durable skills, so they could be some of the longer term pieces of technology, things like Word, PowerPoint, they've been around for a while, they're likely to remain. But then what are those durable skills and how can you underpin those with technology? So things like problem solving, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, but how can we teach that in a way that it's not divorced from the technology, getting students to collaborate online and get used to that environment. So I think, it's developing that mindset, being able to say, I know how to work in a digital world. I don't necessarily need to know how to use every technology, but I need to be able to get to grips with new technology as it comes along. And one of my colleagues said, years ago, we all used to go, yeah, I'll give it a go. She's noticed that actually students nowadays, they go, I don't know where to click. And it's that mindset of, we'll give it a go, let's try it. And that's what we need to instill into some of our students.
Yeah, absolutely. I begin to wonder how that sort of change and when that change started to happen actually. But Neelam.
So I feel like I'm challenging a lot of things, and I'm really sorry about that. And it's
No,
probably
it's good.
because of the book I read on the train. It's all about making challenge and going radical candor. So I just have to put another question out there. I think our industry is also confused. And the reason I say that is because we're in so many contexts, we are preparing our students with these skills that they need, the 21st century skills. And I agree with Julie, we've got to put them in this environment where they're working with technology and we're nurturing the 21st century skills. But at the same time, while we're producing these high caliber graduates, then the feedback they get is, you're overly qualified, or you can't really fit into this scheme because you already know what we're going to teach you. So that sort of leaves some of our graduates not knowing what to do next, or having to retrain in a different field so they can get a job. So I think that there's that too. Has the metrics changed? Initially it was about the 5 C's, but now do we have to think about our digital literacy skills? Do we need to think about these AI, machine learning, deep thinking skills that we still have to nurture? But most importantly, are we not focusing enough on data, where data is power? And so many of our students and ourselves don't know how to work with data. We don't know how to analyze it. We don't know what the trends mean. We don't know how to ask the right questions. So I think it's a different skill set that we need to look into. We need to investigate a bit further and then work with the industry, like you said, shared practice, and perhaps come up with new metrics so that our students are not being trained to do things that we think is the right answer, but it's so far off from what they need.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I have to say on that data point, our final session of the day actually is all about how we as educators can use data and to our better advantage in terms of understanding our students and where they're coming from. And AI is something we've touched upon, but there is an additional panel later on, also specifically on AI. So yes, thank you. Thank you, panelists. It's almost like I've thrown that in there for you to promote those future sessions for me. But no, there's seriously though, on a serious note, I think there's some such valuable topics, but I know that we could go on, and I know when we sort of met previously before this call, we can just continue to talk, but we have time before the close of the session, and I was wondering if there was anyone in the audience that wanted to ask a question or two to our panelists. Oh, we have a few. Do we have a roaming mic? So can we start? Yeah, can we start There, thank you.
So it's, okay.
Yep.
A question from me is, how do we collaborate across industry to ensure that humanity is embedded in what we're teaching? Because you can't use technology if you haven't got ethical embedding.
Absolutely.
All those elements need to be in there. Because industry wants technology because it makes everything easier. But how do we teach ethics?
How do we teach
As
ethics?
a core.
So how do we collaborate to be able to integrate ethics within what we're teaching? I think is that
yeah.
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 Anyone who would like to take that?
I mean, the collaboration element, I mean, Portsmouth's a pretty good example, without blowing my own trumpet, of that, is the fact that you've got some big high-power mats down there, and yet we're all working together because it's that shared vision, but you need someone driving that. So you need someone saying, actually, what do you believe? What do you believe? What do you want? Oh, wait, hang on a moment, that's the same as Joe Blogs down the road. Okay, so then you've got that buy-in, but you've got to have someone being the glue to stick it together and finding out what everyone does want and where they're at. It's kind of that, not why, but why wouldn't you do that for our children? From an ethical consideration, that bit I'm not quite so sure on. Can anyone add?
Yeah.
Go on,
I think
Neelam.
that's a really interesting question. And if our industry doesn't know the value of human intelligence, now we have a problem.
Yeah.
So it's down to us to
Yeah.
make sure we bring in the ethics, we bring in that human intelligence within our teaching practices, and we tell the industry, if necessary, that this is critical. Because you can get the technology, but we will only dumb down our learners if we don't bring in that human component into it.
Yeah.
And they should know by now, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have next questions? I think.
It's been absolutely fascinating, thank you. Just, there's a couple of things for me. How do we accelerate the agenda that we've been discussing? How do we really sort of expedite what is now, you just talked about a critical, I think it's pretty critical, particularly in secondary education, when we're looking at the disaffection and absence and teacher recruitment. How do we compel policymakers to move more quickly into what, the curriculum's not going to catch up, the CPD for staff is not going to catch up. I don't think we necessarily need the construct or the infrastructure. We need the appetite to move more quickly as a sector. How are we going to mandate that? Because if you're sitting in academies and schools at the moment dealing with some of these behaviours and issues, it's getting to crisis point. So any thoughts on how we as leaders really accelerate this now?
How do we accelerate the agenda?
I mean, there are a few meetings happening at the moment where they are talking about things like that. And there are some people in the room who have brought that to key people's attention and said, actually, things do need to change. But that's a small group of people. It goes back to that saying, be the change you wish to see in the world. We all need to be that change that we want to take forward, which doesn't quite, I know it's a bit of a fairy way to answer your question, but I think it's that element of people are trickling, okay? There's groups out there that are trying to make that, but that's one small little like pebble down Southsea Beach. We need a big rock in a river for us all to actually move forward.
Yeah.
I
Does anyone else?
Yeah, just to respond, I think in further education we have the Association of Colleges, which is a great voice on behalf of the community, and it's our leaders getting together and being a unified voice. I think across the whole education community, it's not just colleges, it's everyone, and I think we have a shared responsibility to do that.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we've got time for another question. Yep.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know the speaker at the end, you mentioned about employers valuing human intelligence. Could you define that? Are you talking about emotional intelligence here? Because we know AI can do a lot of things that humans can also create. So what did you mean by human intelligence?
So human intelligence really has to do with making the right decisions. What we program into an AI, robot, bot, whatever you want to call it, is an answer that we have given them. And that, I think that comes quite clearly in the example of, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a scenario of a car. You're driving in a car, you've got two scenarios in front of you. You're going to have to crash. Scenario A is you kill 5 children. Scenario B is, yeah, nods, you kill an elderly sort of group of people. Or there may be a scenario C. Now, we don't know scenario C, but that's our human intelligence. Until we get there and we see the variations, we won't be able to determine what the next point of contact is. But in that fixed data set that we put into an AI, that's all they know. A or B, or C or D, or whatever it may be. So that human intelligence is being able to think out of the box. It's being able to be empathetic, understanding emotion with it, connecting with relationships, having the conversations that happen offline. Anything that happens online is going into our AI tools, regardless, it's all going, right? So anything that happens offline, that's your gold. That's the human intelligence. Yeah.
And I think just to add, actually, it might be of interest, many of you may know this already, so apologies if you do, but the World Economic Forum produces regularly the Future of Jobs report. And in the top 5 skills listed that our students are going to need are creativity, collaboration, problem solving, logical reasoning. Those are all human traits that will help us continue to master and harness technology.
And I think that we should never forget that AI might take us 80% of the way, but we all need to be in the room critically thinking in the topics that we're asking information for, we're the subject matter experts. So we need to harness and promote the ability to critically appraise those responses and use that 20% to our advantage because we know why we have asked that question in the first place. That's the human element, I think.
Thank you. And on that note, I'm going to draw this discussion to a close very reluctantly, I have to say. You guys have been amazing. Thank you. Can we have a round of applause for the panelists? Brilliant. I think we're all going to be here for a bit, but while we change the stage, our next session will be at 11:05. It'll be hosted by AQA about adaptive on-screen testing. So that's in 10 minutes. I'll see you all then.